Everything started shaking, the noise didn't stop, and we pretty much knew right away that we were in an earthquake. My first thought was Evelyn, so I dropped what I was doing and took off running for the guest house. My friend Reuben followed me. He fell down a couple of times on his way there. I was able to get to the guest house, find out where she was. About the time that I got to her, the shaking stopped. And we started congregating on the patio to see if everybody was all right.
It was pretty scary, but God was gracious.
We were in the kitchen area. Obvious that this was a earthquake. We did not fall. As soon as the shaking stopped, after about 30 seconds or so, we tried to get out through the front door, but found that our stairway had completely collapsed. Then we went to the back of the house. I was worried about how we were going to get out the back balcony door since we had nailed it shut, but when we got to the back, we found that that was not a problem because a hole had opened up in the wall.
At that moment, a really loud sound happened and then the earth started shaking. And I was in the middle of the road and I saw a schoolgirl coming towards me who was just petrified, and so I just hugged her. We just held each other until it was over. And then she went home, and I kind of often wonder what she went home to, whether her house is flat or she lost any family. I haven't heard from her since.
Houses started falling. Everything was covered in this cloud of thick white dust. It was almost like you were in the eye of a storm.
I heard just a terrible sound. The earth started to slightly tremble and then it started to buckle. I looked around for somewhere to be that wasn't shaking, but as soon as it was over, I went to my truck to get the groceries because I had to put the groceries away.
Well, as everyone knows by now, January 12th was an interesting day here in Haiti. And for us, it was the day we were coming back to Haiti from our trip out for December, for Christmas. We came to Christianville, we drove into our driveway, and Ryan had two pastors waiting for him, as he often does. As soon as you get home, the needs start coming. After that, I wasn't thinking that this was a huge catastrophe. I didn't know I was 5 miles from the epicenter of one of the deadliest earthquakes to hit Haiti. At that point, I just knew, oh, the earth shook. I got to go get a blood pressure cuff for Evelyn. So I kept going to the clinic. And then when I got to the clinic, I saw that the patient waiting area was collapsed, and there were a bunch of holes in the walls, and all the patients thankfully were gone. And so we locked up the gates to the clinic because we knew we couldn't go in. And I went back, and as I was coming back, I saw that Jim and Sandy's apartment had collapsed. And I heard from Nani that they were inside it. And so we were worried and we were running, and then we saw Jim and Sandy. They were full of dust and debris, and they were out and they were safe. And they'd been in their apartment when it collapsed, but thankfully they were safe. Jimmy had caught them as they jumped out of a hole in their wall. So then I looked around and was just trying to assess the damage, and I saw that the high school had collapsed, and we ran over there to make sure no kids were inside, and thankfully there were none. And as we were running over there, another aftershock shook, and we saw the high school collapse even more. And at that point, Ryan had come to find me. And so I remember in my head just thinking, how are we going to replace all these buildings? Really quickly after that, it became a story of survival, really, because as we rounded the corner to walk back to the guest house to make sure Nora was okay, we knew she was outside, so we figured she was okay. As we came into the yard, already there was a woman there sitting bleeding, and they said, she needs help. So I had some material in my bag, so we got out some of the materials that I had there and started patching her up, and then somebody else came, and so we started patching that person up, and then a third, and all of a sudden it hit us what a big thing this had been, and that there may be quite a few injured people. By 6 o'clock, there was a steady stream of people coming into the yard at Christianville, and about half of them were just shaken up, and just wanted a place to gather because their houses had fallen and they weren't hurt. And so they gathered in one area and just started singing and praying. And then the other half of them were injured, most of them pretty severely. And so we triaged them out into a different area of the yard and started working on them. Started sewing up the people that needed sewing up. We put the people with broken bones to one side because we didn't have anything to set them with. We didn't have any plaster or anything like that. So we knew we were just going to have to do pain control over the night for them until they could get to a hospital. At that point, I think we'd heard that Port-au-Prince had been affected, so we knew we couldn't send these people on to General Hospital or any other hospitals in Port. The sick people just started piling up in our yard, and then night fell, and Tanguay rigged up some lights so that we could have some light, and we worked all night long. Some of it was just cement blocks splitting heads open, and some of it was a lot worse. Feet cut off, loss of limbs, paralysis, people that we thought might die, and then a few that did. In the midst of that, a baby was born. A woman came, and she was in labor and couldn't wait any longer and just had the baby in the dust right at the gate. And so I ran and cut the cord and wrapped the baby up. Throughout the night you could hear the little baby's newborn cries mixed with the other people who were screaming in pain. And it was just it was an emotional night, but we didn't have time for emotion when it was happening, really. We were all so busy.
Si c'est pas jodi, c'est demain. Comme moi compter à bon Dieu. Jodi à la ba ou l'homme. Si vous méprisez ou pas.